Welcome to Talk Tickers. We are cutting through the noise and getting straight to the mechanics of the market.
That's right.
Usually we are here tearing apart an earnings report, looking at a specific ticker symbol, or analyzing a macro trend. But today, we aren't talking about a specific stock.
No.
We aren't talking about an earnings beat. We're talking about the infrastructure of advice itself.
That's right. We are looking at the rule book. I mean, the operating system that governs the people who tell you where to put your money.
And frankly, this is arguably the most critical trade setup an investor faces. Because in the financial world, there is a massive, often invisible gap between good enough and best for you.
It is the spread between a comfortable retirement and working 5 extra years to pay off a broker's new boat. And I don't say that lightly. The math, which we will get into, is absolutely brutal.
The stakes here are incredibly high. And the problem is most investors operate under a very dangerous assumption.
A huge one.
They assume that if they walk into a nice office with a nice mahogany desk and sit down with someone wearing a tailored suit who calls themselves a financial advisor, that person is legally required to put the client's interest first.
It feels like a doctor-patient relationship, right?
Yeah.
You assume the doctor isn't prescribing a specific pill just because the pharmaceutical rep bought him a steak dinner.
Right.
You assume the prescription is for your health, your best interest.
But in the financial sector, that assumption is often dead wrong. The reality is often a legal gray area. It's a battlefield involving what we call hat switching, revenue sharing, and standards of care that shift depending on exactly what product is being slid across the desk.
So today on Talk Tickers, we are breaking down the incentives. We're looking at the regulatory loopholes and the cold, hard math that determines whether an advisor serves the client or the firm.
We're looking at the clash between the fiduciary standard and the suitability standard.
And of course, the newer complication known as regulation best interest, or Reg BI.
We have a lot to cover. We're going to look at the history of the 1940 Act, the mechanics of dual registration, a real money case study of how this math plays out for a hypothetical family, and finally,
the one question you need to ask to protect yourself.
So let's start at the beginning. Let's unpack the core mechanics first, because before we can understand the loopholes, we have to understand the baseline.
Right. We have 2 primary standards of care in the United States financial system. They've been at war for decades.
In one corner, we have the fiduciary standard.
Think of this as the gold standard. The fiduciary standard is rooted in the Investment Advisors Act of 1940. It's old. It has teeth.
And what does it actually mandate?
If an advisor is a fiduciary, they have a legal mandate. They are required to put the client's interest first, above the firm's interest, above the advisor's own interest. No exceptions.
It sounds simple, but legally that is a very high bar. First is a heavy word in contract law.
It is the heaviest word. And it consists of 2 main duties. First, you have the duty of loyalty.
The duty of loyalty.
This means the advisor must subrogate their own interests to the client's. They have to fully disclose and, more importantly, eliminate or mitigate conflicts of interest.
Meaning they can't just say, hey, I might make a kickback on this, and then proceed to gouge you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A simple disclosure isn't enough. The conflict has to be managed entirely in the client's favor. It's a profound obligation.
Okay, so that's one part. What's the other?
The second part is the duty of care. They must provide advice that is suitable based on a reasonable investigation. They can't base recommendations on inaccurate info or, guesswork.
They have to actually do the work, the due diligence.
They have to do the work.
Yeah.
And it has to be documented. This isn't about just having a good feeling about a stock. It's about a rigorous, defensible process.
And typically, how are these advisors compensated? Because follow the money, right? That's what we do on this show.
Always follow the money. Usually it's fee only or fee based. They might charge a flat fee for a plan, an hourly rate, or most commonly, a percentage of assets under management.
Like 1% of the portfolio value per year.
Exactly. The key is that the advisor sits on the same side of the table as the client. If your account grows, the advisor makes more. If your account shrinks, the advisor makes less. The incentives are mathematically aligned.
Their skin is in the game, so to speak.
Their skin is directly in the game.
Okay, so that's the gold standard, the fiduciary. Now, let's look at the other side of the battlefield, the suitability standard. This is the old broker rule.
Yeah, this has been around for a long time. Historically, this was governed by FINRA Rule 2-111. This applied to brokers, or properly termed Registered representatives.
Registered representative. That term always stuck out to me. Representative of whom?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what they are. They represent the broker-dealer. They represent the firm that employs them. Their primary duty isn't to you.
So under this suitability standard, what's the mandate?
The mandate is that a recommendation must be suitable for the client's profile. They have to look at your age, your risk tolerance, your financial goals, your needs.
But suitable does not mean the best.
That is the critical distinction. It's the gap you can drive a truck through, financially speaking. Let's use an analogy.
Okay.
If you need a suit for a wedding, a suitable suit is one that fits your measurements, covers your body, doesn't drag on the floor, it's, appropriate for the occasion.
Sounds reasonable.
But under the suitability standard, if I'm the tailor, I can sell you the suit that pays me the highest commission. Maybe it's made of polyester and costs twice as much as the wool one, as long as it technically fits you.
I see. So I get a suit, but maybe not the best suit for my money.
You get a suit. You don't get the best suit, it's suitable.
So to bring it back to finance, if product A pays the broker a huge 5% commission and product B pays nothing, but both are suitable for my risk profile, the broker can sell me product A without breaking the law.
Precisely. Under the old suitability standard, there is no strict requirement to put the client first. There's no strict requirement to disclose all conflicts, although some disclosures are required. It's fundamentally a sales standard, not an advice standard.
It allows for the extraction of value from the client to the firm, provided the product isn't disastrously wrong for the client.
The bar is just not unsuitable. That's it.
And this brings us to the new player in town, Regulation Best Interest, or Reg BI. This was implemented back in June 2020. What was the intent here to fix this?
Well, the intent was to upgrade the suitability standard. The SEC wanted to raise the floor for broker-dealers without, and this is key, without making them all fiduciaries.
So it's a hybrid, a middle ground.
It is. It's called a best interest standard, but, and this is crucial, according to the SEC itself, it is not technically a fiduciary standard in the way the 1940 Act defines it.
It sounds better, but is it actually better?
It is an improvement over pure suitability, yes. It has four main obligations. First, there's the disclosure obligation.
Yeah.
They must provide full and fair disclosure of material facts, their capacity, their fees, the scope of their service, usually in a new standardized document called Form CRS.
The client relationship summary, which, let's be honest, almost nobody reads.
I mean, they're supposed to, but yes, it's more fine print in a world of fine print. Second, there's the care obligation.
Care obligation, what does that mean?
They must exercise reasonable diligence, care, and skill. They have to actually understand the products they are recommending and have a reasonable basis to believe the recommendation is in the best interest of the retail customer.
So they can't just throw darts at a board.
No, the dartboard defense is out. Third is the conflict of interest obligation. This one is important.
How so?
They must establish written policies to identify and then disclose or mitigate conflicts. For example, Reg BI explicitly eliminates sales contests or quotas for specific securities within limited time periods.
So no more trip to Hawaii for whoever sells the most of this specific high-fee mutual fund this month.
Right. Those blatant high-pressure sales contests are largely gone. That's a definite win for the consumer.
And the fourth obligation.
The compliance obligation. The firm has to have written policies and procedures to enforce all of this. They have to prove they are trying to comply.
But here's the key distinction, and where it gets really interesting, as you said. Reg BI applies to transactions. It applies to the recommendation at the moment it is made.
Exactly. The duty attaches to the recommendation.
Whereas the fiduciary duty applies to the entire relationship. It's ongoing.
Precisely. A fiduciary has an ongoing duty to monitor your account and advise you. If something changes, they have to let you know. A broker operating under Reg BI has a duty to make a best interest recommendation when you buy the stock, but they don't necessarily have a legal duty to call you 6 months later when the fundamentals change.
Unless they've specifically agreed to ongoing account monitoring, which would be a separate service.
Correct. It makes the transaction cleaner, sure, but it doesn't marry the advisor to the client's long-term success in the same way a fiduciary relationship does.
To understand why we have this split system, this two-tiered justice system for money, we have to look back at the history. This isn't a new problem. This didn't just happen.
No, not at all. It goes back to the Great Depression. The Investment Advisors Act of 1940 was created specifically to eliminate the rampant conflicts of interest and prevent the abuse of trust that were seen as contributing to the market crash of '29.
Back then, you had so-called investment counselors who were essentially just dumping their own bad inventory onto unsuspecting clients.
Is the original pump and dump. They'd buy a worthless stock, talk it up to their clients, sell it to them at a high price, and then walk away.
So the 1940 Act created the fiduciary duty to be a high wall separating the salespeople from the true advisors.
That was the idea, to create a profession of advice, not just sales.
And then we had a landmark Supreme Court case in 1963 that really cemented this.
Yes, SEC v. Capital Gains Research Bureau. This is a huge case. The Supreme Court established that investment advisors have an affirmative duty of utmost good faith.
Utmost good faith. That's powerful language.
It's incredibly powerful. It solidified the idea that you cannot secretly profit from your advice at the expense of the client. It was a moral stance as much as a legal one. The court basically said, you are in a position of trust and you must act like it.
Then a decade later, ERISA comes along in 1974.
The Employee Retirement Income Security Act. This is another major step. It established fiduciary standards for retirement plans, pensions specifically.
But here's where the government, in an attempt to clarify things, actually created a massive loophole.
A loophole that the industry drove a freight train through for 40 years. In 1975, the Department of Labor created what's known as the 5-part test to determine if someone was an investment advice fiduciary for a retirement plan.
And like any multi-part test and regulation, if you fail one part, the whole thing falls apart.
Exactly. To be a fiduciary under this 1975 rule, the advice had to meet all 5 criteria. And some of them were, well, they were easy to get around.
Such as?
One of them was that the advice had to be on a regular basis. Another was that it had to serve as the primary basis for the investment decision.
So wait a minute. If a broker gave you a one-time recommendation to roll over your entire life savings from a 401k to a high commission annuity, they could argue that wasn't on a regular basis, so they weren't a fiduciary.
That was the loophole that swallowed the rule. It was known as the one-time advice exemption. They could dodge fiduciary status on the single most important financial decision of a person's life, the rollover, because it was a transactional event, not a recurring one.
That's astonishing.
It was a status quo for decades. And you have to remember the context.
Right.
The context has changed completely since 1975.
Yeah.
Back then, most people had defined benefit pensions. The company managed the money. General Motors had professional fiduciaries running their pension fund. The individual didn't bear the investment risk.
Now, we all have defined contribution plans like 401ks and IRAs. The risk has shifted entirely to the individual.
Entirely. We are all our own pension managers now, whether we like it or not.
Which is why there has been this epic battle for reform. The Department of Labor has been struggling for over a decade to update this archaic rule.
It's been a war of attrition. They had the 2010 proposal that was withdrawn. They had the 2016 rule, which was a huge step forward, but it was ultimately vacated by the courts after intense industry lobbying and lawsuits.
And now, what's the latest proposal?
Now, they are proposing moving from that rigid 5-part bright line test to a more principles-based, fact-dependent standard.
So it focuses on the reasonable expectations of the investor.
Right. If a reasonable person sitting across the desk from you would expect that you are acting in their best interest and putting them first, then the law should reflect that. It closes that rollover loophole. It expands regular basis so that even a one-time rollover could trigger fiduciary duty if providing that kind of advice is part of the advisor's regular business.
But while the DOL fights that battle over retirement accounts, the SEC stepped in with Reg BI for the brokers on the taxable account side.
Exactly. The SEC's move was, in part, a response to the DOL's actions to raise the floor for everyone without forcing every broker to become a full-fledged 1940 Act fiduciary. It's an incremental step, but it creates this incredibly complex, overlapping landscape for investors to navigate.
Let's get into the practical mechanics of that landscape, because in the real world, it's not always advisor A versus advisor B. Sometimes it's the same person wearing 2 different hats.
This is the deal registration problem, and the statistics are absolutely staggering. An estimated 80% of assets under management by registered investment advisors, or RIAs, are actually managed by firms that are duly registered.
So they are both broker-dealers and investment advisors.
At the same time, under the same roof.
So how does hat switching work in practice? Walk me through the meeting. What does that sound like?
Okay. Imagine you sit down for a financial plan. The advisor says, I'm going to charge you a $2,000 fee to build a comprehensive retirement plan for you.
Okay, that sounds like a fiduciary act. I'm paying for advice.
It is. In that moment, they are acting as an investment advisor representative. They are a fiduciary. They are wearing the fiduciary hat. They have to give you advice that is in your best interest.
I get the plan. It's great. It says I need to invest in some specific funds and maybe buy an insurance product.
Right. And then the advisor says, great news, I can help you implement this plan. We can buy those products right here. Now, in that moment, they take off the fiduciary hat and they put on the broker hat.
Without saying a word.
Without saying a word. When they sell you the mutual fund with a front-end load, they're collecting a commission. In that specific transaction, they're now operating under the lower standard of Reg BI or Suitability, depending on the product and the state jurisdiction.
And to the client, it just looks like one seamless relationship.
To the client, it's just Bob, my money guy. It's one continuous conversation. But to the regulators, it's two different standards of care happening in the same meeting. Legally, Bob has a split personality. He shifted his legal duties to you in the middle of a sentence.
And this is where that form CRS you mentioned is supposed to come in.
It's supposed to, yes. The client relationship summary. It's designed to clarify this. It has to state the fees, the conflicts, the legal standards. But let's be honest, how many retail investors read the fine print of a form CRS and understand the legal nuance of acting in a broker-dealer capacity?
Very, very few. It's jargon.
It's jargon. And the paperwork itself is the hat switch. You sign a financial planning agreement, which is the fiduciary part, and then separately you sign a brokerage account agreement. That second signature is what authorizes the switch.
Wow. Now we have to talk about the insurance and annuity dimension. Because if the securities world is a jungle, the insurance world is the Wild West.
It's a whole different beast. Because insurance isn't just regulated by the SEC or FINRA at the federal level, it's state regulated. The McCarran-Ferguson Act from 1945 leaves insurance regulation to the states.
So you have 50 different insurance commissioners, 50 different sets of rules.
A complete patchwork. And historically, the standard for selling an annuity was pure suitability. Is this annuity suitable for a 70-year-old? If yes, sell it, collect your 7% commission, and move on.
But that's changing now, too.
It is, slowly. Many states are now adopting a model law from the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC. It's a best interest model. It requires insurance producers to prioritize the client's interest, but again, it is legally distinct from a true fiduciary standard.
And this creates friction, I imagine.
Massive friction. You have the DOL saying that if an annuity is purchased with retirement money like from a 401k rollover, it should fall under a strict fiduciary standard. Then you have the insurance industry pushing back hard, saying the state-based NAIC best interest model is sufficient.
It's a turf war, and the battlefield is your retirement account.
Absolutely. This is the engine behind the free steak dinner seminar circuit. They are pushing equity-indexed annuities that can lock up your money for 10 years with massive surrender charges. Under some state laws, those might be suitable, even if a low-cost bond fund would have been a far better solution.
Another really practical difference here is what happens when things go wrong. Where do you go for justice?
This is huge. And most people don't think about it until it's too late. If you are with a broker-dealer under Suitability or Reg BI, you almost certainly signed a mandatory arbitration clause when you opened your account.
Meaning you can't sue them in court?
You can't sue. You go to fine array arbitration. It's a panel of arbitrators, not a jury of your peers. Discovery is limited. And you, the client, generally have to prove the broker committed fraud or clear wrongdoing. The burden of proof is on you.
But if you are with a pure fiduciary RIA?
The game changes. Clients can often sue in court. And crucially, the burden of proof is often on the advisor to prove they acted in the client's best interest.
It flips the script.
It flips the entire legal script. Utmost good faith is a powerful weapon in a courtroom. Juries understand the concept of a betrayal of trust. They don't really understand suitability parameters.
Let's move to real money. We talk about these standards in the abstract, but I want to see the math. I want to see the impact on a real portfolio. Let's look at the Johnson family case study.
Right. This makes it real. We have the Johnsons, a couple, age 55. They've saved diligently. They have a $500,000 retirement portfolio they need to invest. They are getting ready to land the plane for retirement, so mistakes now are critical.
In scenario A, they go to advisor Jane. Jane is a fee-only fiduciary. She works for an RIA.
Okay. So Jane sits down with him. She looks at their entire situation. She recommends a diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds or ETFs. Let's say the average expense ratio is a very reasonable 0.1%.
And Jane charges what?
Jane charges a 1% advisory fee to manage the account, do the financial planning, rebalance, and basically keep them on track.
So what's the total all-in cost in year one?
It's 1.1%. That's $5,500 on their $500,000 portfolio. Jane makes $5,000 her 1% fee, and the fund companies make about $500.
Okay. And what is Jane's core incentive here?
Her incentive is to grow the assets. She makes the same 1% regardless of which low-cost fund she uses. She has absolutely no incentive to pick a more expensive fund. If the Johnson's account grows to $600,000, she gets a raise. If it drops to $400,000, she takes a pay cut. Her wallet is aligned with the Johnsons.
Perfectly aligned. Okay, now let's look at scenario B. They go to advisor Bob. Bob is a broker. He works at a large wirehouse and operates under a commission-based Reg BI model.
Bob also recommends a suitable portfolio. He's a nice guy. But he uses actively managed mutual funds with a Class A share structure. And that means they have a front-end load that's a commission and much higher internal expenses. Let's say the front-end load is 5%.
5% right off the top.
Gone. Before the market even opens on day one, 5% of their money is gone. And let's say the internal expense ratio of these active funds is a pretty standard 1.2% per year.
So run the math on year one for Bob's clients.
The 5% load on $500,000 is $25,000. That disappears instantly. It goes to Bob and his firm. Then you have the 1.2% expense ratio on the remaining money, which is now $475,000. That's another $5,700 for the year.
So the total cost in year one is what, almost $31,000?
Just about. We're looking at a total cost of roughly $30,700, or over 6% of their initial capital in the first year.
Let's put that side by side. Jane's clients pay $5,500. Bob's clients pay $30,700. That is a massive, massive discrepancy.
It's life-changing money. And here is the kicker. Bob's incentive is to sell the product with the highest load. He just made a massive upfront check. He has less financial incentive to service that account next year because he's already been paid for the sale. He killed what he ate. Jane is building an annuity for herself. Bob executed a transaction.
And the compounding difference over 20 years.
It's catastrophic. In Jane's scenario, the client has $494,500 working for them on day one. In Bob's scenario, they start with only $475,000. Over 20 years, assuming a standard 7% return, that initial deficit, combined with the higher annual drag of the 1.2% expense ratio versus the 0.1% ratio, I mean, Bob's client could end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars less in retirement.
Hundreds of thousands. That's the boat you were talking about.
That's the boat. And a second home.
That is the price of suitable. It's the friction cost eating you alive.
It brings us back to that car analogy. I call it the Ford versus Toyota analogy. I think it's the best way to visualize the difference between these standards.
Break that down for us.
Okay. Under the suitability standard, you go to a Ford dealer. You say, I need a reliable commuter car. The dealer looks at his lot and sells you a Ford Explorer. It's a car. It commutes. It works. It is suitable.
Even if a Toyota Highlander was actually better for me, more reliable, better gas mileage.
Even if the Toyota was cheaper, more reliable, and held its value better. The Ford dealer has no obligation to send you down the street to the Toyota dealership. He represents Ford. He is there to sell his inventory.
Okay, so that's the broker. What about the fiduciary?
The fiduciary is a car consultant. They don't work for a manufacturer. You pay them a fee to go out and find you the best car for your needs. If the Toyota is objectively better for you, they must tell you to buy the Toyota. If they don't, they are breaking the law.
And the dual registration variant? The hat switcher.
Oh, that's the tricky dealer. He shows you the Toyota. He's wearing his consultant hat. He says the Toyota is the best car for you, based on my analysis. But then he switches hats and says, and great news, I can sell it to you right here.
I see where this is going.
He only shows you the most expensive trim level with the heated steering wheel package and the useless rust proofing, because that is where his margin is. He gave you the right car, fiduciary advice, but he sold you the most expensive version of it, broker transaction.
That is a terrifyingly accurate picture of how this works in the industry. So for the investor listening to this, the context has shifted. It used to be caveat emptor, buyer beware.
It was. Now with Reg BI, the documentation burden has shifted more to the firm. Investors should expect more paperwork. Form CRS is everywhere now. But it also means you should see clearer disclosures on why a rollover or a specific product was recommended.
So what are the red flags an investor should look for right now? If they grab that Form CRS or they're in a meeting, what jumps out?
The first and most obvious one is proprietary products. If an advisor acts as a consultant, but then only seems to recommend funds from their own parent company, you have to ask questions. Why is the house brand always the best option?
It's like the waiter recommending the special because the fish is about to go bad.
That's exactly it. Why is the JP Morgan advisor only recommending a JP Morgan fund? Maybe it's the best, but maybe it's just what's on the approved menu. The second red flag is revenue sharing.
That's harder to spot, right?
It's harder. It's often buried in the fine print. These are preferred partner lists, where mutual fund companies pay brokerage firms for shelf space. It's pay to play. The firm gets a kickback for selling certain funds, which creates a conflict.
And the third one, I think this one's the most intuitive.
Opaque fees. If you ask the simple question, how do you get paid? What do I pay? And the answer is anything other than a clear, direct number.
Like, oh, you don't pay me anything. The company pays me.
Run. Just run for the exit. That is code for I'm a salesperson, not a partner. A true advisor will say, you pay me X% per year, or my fee is Y dollars. Transparency is the only acceptable answer.
And don't get lulled into a false sense of security by the label best interest.
Right. It's a great marketing term. Reg BI uses the term best interest, but as we said, the SEC explicitly states it is not the same fiduciary standard from the 1940 Act. It is a compliance standard for brokers. It means they check the boxes, not that they've adopted you into their family.
We've covered the definitions, the history, the loopholes, and the brutal math. Now we arrive at what might be the most important part of this whole deep dive, the one question.
Yes, and the setup here is absolutely crucial. Do not, under any circumstances, just ask, are you a fiduciary?
Why not? That seems like the obvious, logical question to ask.
Because a dual registrant, one of those hat switchers, will look you right in the eye and say yes. And they aren't even lying. They are fiduciary sometimes when they're doing the financial plan. But they might not be when they're selling you the product. It's a half-truth, which is the most dangerous kind.
It's an incomplete answer. So what is the better question? What is the dagger?
The question is, will you sign a sworn statement, putting in writing, that you will act as a fiduciary for 100% of our relationship and regarding every single dollar in this account?
100% of the relationship and every single dollar. Those phrases are the key.
They are the entire key. If they hesitate, if they stumble, if they start talking about different hats, or say, well, for the planning part, yes, but for the implementation, we use a brokerage platform, you have just identified the gap.
You found the hat switch.
You found it. You're likely dealing with a dual registrant or a broker operating under Reg BI, not a pure full-time fiduciary.
That simple question just cuts through all the marketing noise and all the jargon. Why does that matter so much?
Because it forces to declare their loyalty. It removes the gray area. If they can't sign a simple piece of paper affirming their loyalty to you, it means they're consciously keeping the door open to put their interest or their firm's interest ahead of yours at some point. It forces the implicit to become explicit.
And if they give you the line, oh, my compliance department won't let me sign something like that,
then you have your answer. Their firm's business model does not allow them to assume full fiduciary liability for the entire client relationship. You can still work with them, but you must do it with your eyes wide open, knowing that a conflict of interest is not a possibility, it's a certainty.
Let's wrap this up with the main takeaways for everyone listening.
Okay. Number 1, labels matter. Financial advisor is a generic marketing term. It means nothing legally. Registered investment advisor means fiduciary. Registered representative or broker-dealer means suitability or Reg BI. Those are the regulatory terms that define where their loyalty lies.
Number 2, incentives drive outcomes.
Always. Can't get away from it. The suitability model allows for commissions and conflicts that fiduciary standards strictly manage or outright prohibit. If the incentive is to sell a product, they will sell a product. You cannot expect someone to act against their own wallet indefinitely.
And number 3, the incredible cost of okay.
The difference between a merely suitable portfolio and a true best interest portfolio can be tens of thousands of dollars in year 1 alone and hundreds of thousands over a lifetime. Don't settle for suitable. Suitable's the Ford Explorer when you needed the Highlander. Demand best interest in the truest, most legally binding sense of the words.
This has been Talk Tickers. Do your due diligence, check the Form CRS, and know who is sitting on the other side of the table.
And remember, this is for informational purposes only, not investment advice. Past performance does not guarantee future results.
We'll see you on the next trade.
Stay sharp.